Good morning to you, Dan Patrick Show, Fox Sports Radio, iHeartRadio app. Welcome in. Dan Beyer alongside him, Doug Gottlieb. It's the 5th of July. It's a Friday, but we are getting closer to football, like actual football. And who better to welcome that part of the year in than Mark Dominik, who joins us weekly on the Doug Gottlieb Show. He's kind enough to spend some time with us here on the Dan Patrick Show. He spent 20 years in NFL front offices and scouting. Of course, he's the former general manager of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Good 4th of July to you, Mark. How was it last night?
It was great. Just went across the street, watched the big fireworks show, ran into the Hasselbecks, if we remember them of football lore, and spent some time with them.
Well, just a quick side note, okay? If you run into Tim, not Matt, just remember, I'm really good friends with Tim. Tim, honestly, I've learned more football from Tim than any other human. When I was at ESPN, we used to sit together, watch Monday Night Football, and he would tell me where the ball was supposed to go and why it was supposed to go there. Like every snap, it was totally having a cheat code next to you. So those are really, really good guys. But just remember to remind Tim that his brother is better at everything than him. That always puts him in a good place. Dak Prescott in a walking boot. It's July, but no one knew he should be in a walking boot. You're the general manager. I'm guessing you'd know, but if you didn't and you turned and you looked at your phone and you saw that, what would go through your mind?
Well, the first thing I'd do is, if I didn't know, is I would call his agent real quick and just kind of get an understanding of, did something happen recently, or is this just preventative, or why are we in the walking boot in the first place? It would be, if I didn't know, it would be a little bit of concern, but sometimes it's just to reduce swelling or to reduce inflammation. And so it's not as big a concern. And then once we've kind of heard that this has been somewhat protocol, then I'd just be like, hey, look, as long as you're just doing what you're supposed to do to be ready for week 1 of the regular season, keep at it. And I wouldn't be as big of a concern about it right now if I was the Dallas Cowboys or their fans.
Okay, so we're getting closer and closer to some of these deals being consummated. Let's start with the Dolphins because they have a legit amount of talent. You have a front office that reportedly stood by, when Brian Flores was let go, one of the reasons they let him go was he didn't buy into Tua. So these are the guys that drafted Tua. These are the guys that believe in Tua. On the other hand, there is when the rubber meets the road, how much do you want to pay Tua? What do you do from a front office perspective when they just want to fall in line with the Trevor Lawrence contracts of the world and you don't think Tua should get that type of contract? How do you handle it?
Yeah, I think you got to find a balance, and I think there's starting to be one. Gut instinct is, and a little bit is that it won't be your traditional 5-year deal for Tua. I talked, I think, last week or the week before, maybe something around 3. I'm thinking it's going to be more of a possible 4-year deal. So again, as the club, you're thinking worst case scenario when you sign a contract. You're trying to protect your club, but you also know how much you want that player. And in this situation, I think that you won't see the traditional 5-year deal that we've seen almost every quarterback sign. I think you'll see something in the 3 or 4 year deal that will still allow the Dolphins some flexibility if something happens from a physical standpoint to Tua that he can't, participate, going forward in 2026 or 2027, and that you could still get out of the contract. So I think it's going to be finding that common ground with less years.
I want to jump in and just jump back quick. There's an issue with my mic here in my studio. But about the Cowboys, and since you're talking contracts, maybe this works. Cee Dee Lamb is expected to be a contract holdout. We know about Dak's situation. How does Cee Dee Lamb's situation obviously affect the Cowboys? And if you, in the end, if you are Jerry Jones, do you have to cave him and give him the contract, considering that you're waiting on Dak and waiting to see how this season plays out? How do you handle Cee Dee Lamb's situation?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. And, when the maximum fine is around $50,000 a day, but you're talking about in terms of if a player doesn't report who's under contract, right? So you're talking about a player like a Cee Dee Lamb. Well, $50,000 a day when you're looking in the mid-30s as a contract per year isn't enough of a deterrent. And I think it's it's going to be a bigger deal for the Cowboys than it is Cee Dee Lamb to miss a week or two. And it's a bigger deal for Jerry Jones. We all know he's getting old, and he wants to have another championship, and it's desperate for him. He really wants to enjoy that moment again, and I know he knows how important Cee Dee Lamb is. So I think that they're going to cave to Cee Dee Lamb. I think he's going to get his deal because Jerry has to get that team on the football field. If he misses a week, it's for a player, it's $350,000, but as a contract, it's a $20 million more a year kind of a deal. So I think they get it done. Just the Cowboys really, really want the players to show up to camp, and then they'll negotiate. I think this is one where Cee Dee Lamb might miss a day or two if the Cowboys can't figure out a way to get he and Micah Parsons done.
Okay, let's go back to the Dolphins thing now. We're bouncing back and forth, but I think it all makes sense to me. We're all on the same page here. I understand you're saying, hey, let's do a 4-year instead of a 5-year deal, but how does that conversation actually go? Like, you pick up the phone and they are like, no, we're doing this. This is what every other top-level quarterback is doing. How do you even again, take us through the real conversations of how it goes when you're not willing to fall in line with what other quarterbacks are doing.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to keep pointing to this. I'm willing to get you close to your average per year of that $50 to $55 million per year. I am, but I have to protect my club. And you, as the agent, have to see that Tua's had a situation here where he almost had the game taken away from him. And because he's 1 hit or 2 hits away from that happening, I have to do this. Now, we can go back to the drawing board in 2 more years from now, once he's got 2 years left, and say, hey, let's relook at this deal. Once he's put 3-4 years in a row stacked on each other, maybe then we'll get the traditional deal going. But I would say this to him, too. If you're going to walk away from $200 million, I'm going to have no problem telling everybody that I offered that because it's $200 million. And so that's a ploy that you can use with the agent to sit there and say, hey, you're the one who's walking away from this boatload of cash. It still lets you get near the average per year that all these quarterbacks are getting. I just need a year less because I've got to be able to walk away because I am concerned, and you should be too. And I would tell the player, too, if I needed to. I'd call the player and say, hey, look, Tua, I want to get the deal done. Okay, I do. But you have to understand you got to own some of this, too, because of what's happened in your injury history. And so that's the way I think you have to communicate on it, getting the Tua deal done when it's not the traditional 5-year deal we're seeing all around the league.
I admitted I was completely wrong, and I did not give Hard Knocks training camp a fair shot, and I was hooked within the first 10 minutes. How comfortable would you have been in a situation like Joe Shane is in with the New York Giants, having cameras in all of these preseason meetings, whether it be at the end of the regular season and moving through? Is this weird to you to see the kind of access that the Giants are giving in this training camp version of Hard Knocks?
A little bit, yeah, because I mean I think it's really putting yourself in New York under the microscope with every statement you make, whether it's Saquon Barkley or something else. It definitely is. It's a great behind the scenes view. I would encourage everybody to watch it because I do think it's very raw and very real in terms of the conversations you have and who all is part of the conversation. It shows you, the different levels of different people involved. You've got, the assistant general manager there. You've got salary cap there. You've got director of player personnel there with the GM ownership. And so you get to see the natural conversations that do happen in terms of like the way they were thinking about the running back room and who they thought might be free agents and how they could fix that position. But I think it's great for fans. It's great for us in the media and things like that. As a GM, it's a little unnerving because I feel like whatever you say can and will be held against you in a court of law.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think that there's one other element to it, which is really, really important, which is it's not that sunlight's the greatest disinfectant, but we do have a tendency to gravitate towards most people on Hard Knocks, right? As much as sometimes, they're sharing stuff they wouldn't normally share. I don't know. I don't know how you view it, Mark, because you've lived the world of the NFL. But I do think as a consumer of it, like I find myself, the guys that are the real humans in it, I appreciate a lot more. So, yeah, Dan, I agree with you. They're showing stuff I did not expect to see. On the other hand, I do know that in the end, the process leads me to really liking the team and the people even more.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. To become more humanized, and it's more of a person instead of just you get to see some of the thought process of like maybe the decision was right, maybe the decision was wrong, but you do see the human element of it, which I think is what you're talking about, Dan, Doug, and I think that's a true point.